5 years ago, Charlotte Meehan achieved one of life's big milestones, purchasing the lease on a one-bedroom flat with her partner. It has since come to light that the flat complex poses serious fire safety issues, ranging from flammable HBL cladding to missing cavity barriers. Like thousands of others across the UK, Charlotte and her husband are caught up in the cladding crisis, trapped in a dangerous, unsellable home and staring down the barrel of crippling remediation costs.
It is a daily nightmare. There isn't a day that goes by that I don't think about this situation and what it means for the future of myself, my husband and my fellow neighbours. It is quite simply terrifying. We know that when that bill lands that we're not going to be able to pay it. It's going to ruin us financially. We're going to have to consider bankruptcy or forfeiting our home and losing our home. Everything we've worked hard to build. And just the fear of living somewhere that is essentially a matchbox, and there is nothing we can do to protect ourselves from that. We are completely at the mercy of other companies, freeholders, developers, who are all absolving themselves of responsibility, and it's us that our lives are in danger, and that fear as well is that waking up with that every day really does take a toll. I mean, me personally, my mental health and well-being has severely declined over the last 12 months. Terrible anxiety, loss of appetite, struggling to sleep, all of those things. I don't think I could ever put into words just quite how frightening it all is.
Sadly, stories like Lottie's are not uncommon. Across the country, leaseholders are trapped in dangerous buildings, burdened by the eye-watering costs of making them safe through absolutely no fault of their own. For so many, the situation is a waking nightmare.
The cladding crisis refers to the building safety problems faced by leaseholders of flats in medium and high-rise buildings. Many of these residents are at risk from life-changing costs and unsellable properties as a result of new safety regulations following the Grenfell Tower fire. Cladding in its simplest form is the material added to the outside of a building. Many high-rise buildings in the UK are known to have combustible cladding, posing a serious fire risk. Following the Grenfell Tower fire in 2017, new fire safety rules introduced have left many flat owners liable to pay for making the buildings safe. The predicted number of buildings with unsafe cladding varies, but Inside Housing estimates that up to 657,000 people are affected by the crisis. According to the Housing Committee, remediation works could cost an eye-watering £15 billion. Recommendations from Phase 1 of the Grenfell inquiry has led to major changes in fire safety standards, but the Fire Safety Act 2021 does not protect leaseholders from huge remedial work costs. For many, it is a bitter pill to swallow.
It's more than borderline scandalous. It is an absolute national scandal that these people who have done absolutely everything right, they've saved up their money, they've often used government schemes that were promoting encouraging people to actually buy a flat, and they've had all the checks done, and they put their faith in the developers and in local authorities who were supposed to do the checks, and now they find themselves facing the prospect of £80,000 to £100,000 of money that they're going to have to find from somewhere, and they can't get that. They can't extend their mortgages because in many cases their flats are worth absolutely nothing. They can't get loans because they don't have the capital to put against it. So without being able to access the money from anywhere, they are genuinely facing the prospect of being trapped in their homes, unable to move, unable to get on with their lives, having their mental health and their future plans left in absolute tatters.
The Building Safety Bill has been held up by the government as a key solution to the crisis, but as it stands, it is generating more questions than answers.
They don't necessarily have the weight behind them unless the funding and the money is committed to it. And my worry is that now we're in a situation where there's been a promise of building safety regulators, an appointed person for each high-rise building, and one regulator might be assigned with 10 buildings at a time. Is that the way forward? How is that going to be managed? And I think there are all those questions, and also the questions for the industry and the sector and how that's going to be supported, because What has been seen in the crisis is the lack of capacity and qualified surveyors and people in the sector to be able to help even determine the true extent and scope of the crisis and the scandal, and the number of buildings affected. What needs to happen is a commitment to support people in the country to go into the sector, develop the skills, and then to be able to help implement the measures in the bill. Currently, that's not something that I can see coming out from the bill in its current position.
All eyes are on the new Housing Secretary, Michael Gove, as campaigners hope he will offer more support for leaseholders than his predecessor, Robert Jenrick.
Will he work with us and campaigners to put in law the protection of leaseholders from any remediation costs and bring forward a comprehensive plan to resolve this?
So far, his department isn't giving anything away.
We expect building owners to pursue every route to find funding before passing on any cost to leaseholders, and if the building owners do not, then the cost that they may impose can be challenged in the tribunal. We are looking at further evidence that we have received about the prevalence of cladding on the 11 to 18 metre building cohort. That will help us finalise our decisions, and we shall bring them forward in due course.
It's hard to quantify the true scale of the crisis. There are, for example, around 88,000 buildings between 11 metres and 18 metres needing remediation work that don't qualify for the government's Building Safety Fund or the Waking Watch Relief Fund. Campaigners say the government is refusing to acknowledge the full scale of the cladding crisis.
The simple point is that they need to say, okay, what is the scale of the issue? It's not just buildings over 18 metres. That's been clear for a long time. The government's own consolidated advice notes in January 2020 caused all buildings of all heights to be caught up in this mess. So the first thing, and we've written to Boris Johnson, we've written to Rishi Sunak, we've written to Jenrick when he was in his position, and Michael Gove, just to try and say, okay, you need a better coordinated approach. The point is that look at what they've done in Australia, look at what they've done in Scotland with the mortgage working group, or the working group on mortgage lending and cladding, where they've got all stakeholders from all parts of the industry, the mortgage lenders, insurers, leaseholders, RICS, to sit down and say, right, let's have a proper approach to this, let's assess buildings properly. So the government, I think, is just still scared of the true scale of the crisis. Simple point we always say, it's about fairness. We didn't play any part in this. It's a collective state and industry failure. As the Select Committee has said a number of times, it's an abdication on the part of government to make us pay a penny. Sadly, we've already paid thousands, so we're hopeful now Mr Gove's in place that will realise that the approach they've tried so far has failed, and we just need a completely fresh pair of eyes, and Mr Gove also needs to listen to us and use our lived experience.
The cladding crisis is painfully slow moving. House builder Bellway says it could drag on for 2 decades. Leaseholders simply cannot cope with being stuck in limbo for much longer.
Hearing that number being picked out by a developer is quite, I simply won't be able to hang on for 2 decades. We're thinking about, I got married 2 years ago, my husband and I are thinking about that next stage in our lives, and we're trapped, we're not able to move on and think about our futures, and it's a really quite a frightening and scary prospect to think that we might still be stuck in our 1-bedroom flat, which was meant to be a starting point for us for the next 2 decades.